Next on our agenda is our reports and policies, and the first one is the pupil enrollment projection study that Mr. Bender is going to present. And I would encourage people to stick around for this. This is important information. Mr. Bender?
Thank you, Dr. Ross and Dr. Johnson. Good evening, members of the Board of Education. Consistent with the district's strategic direction and priorities, the services of Plant Moran Cressa have been utilized to provide enrollment projections for 2020 through 2024 to assist in facility use and financial projections. The validity of Plant Moran Cressa enrollment projections is recognized by the Michigan Department of Treasury. Over the past 5 years, the projections have had an accuracy rate of 99.4%. Mr. Andrew Fountain, Senior Consultant, Plant Moran Cressa, who has worked with Macomb County government and entities across the county, is with us here this evening and will be presenting the Pupil Enrollment Projection Study Report for 2020 through 2024, including the impact of national, state, and local trends. This evening we welcome Mr. Fountain.
Good evening.
Great, thank you very much. Good evening, Dr. Johns, Dr. Ross, members of the board and district staff. My name is Andy Fountain. I'm with Plant Moran Cressa, and I'm here this evening to present our update on the pupil enrollment projections. Just a little background on Plant Moran Cressa. We are a real estate consulting firm. As mentioned in the opening, we are recognized by the Department of Treasury as a registered demographer, and our services to our clients are advisory in nature. And our objective is always your success. The next slide here, we have just a visualization for you to understand. We work with clients, K-12 clients across the state, A to Z, Ann Arbor to Zeeland, many here in Southeast Michigan, just like yourself. To sort of kick off the beginning of the report, this is a very interesting slide that we like to show everybody. If you were born in 1957, congratulations, you're part of the largest birth class in the state of Michigan. But as you can see, that since then, it's been we had a steep decline followed by a low and slow decline to today, and in 2018 it was reported that at approximately 107,000 live births is the lowest birth rate recorded on record here in the state of Michigan. This slide here is representative of a report that was put out by SEMCOG, the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. This slide here is meant to represent a projection of the population's ages 5 to 7 from 2015 and through 2045. So you can see a heat map, if you will, of the increases and decreases across Southeast Michigan. Some of your neighboring districts here are highlighted here: Warren, Roseville, Chippewa Valley, DPS, as well as some others: Birmingham, Brighton, and Ann Arbor. So this is meant to give you a visual representation of what the population, the changes in the population in the region will look like over the next several years. Some other key highlights of that report from SEMCOG. School-age population has been declining since the early 2000s. We'll look at another slide here coming up that's a better visual representation of that. And that number is continued, the forecast for that is a continued decrease of 10% by 2025. We're seeing that the impact has been mainly at the elementary and middle school over the last few years, last 15 years. But moving forward, as those children continue to age, that we're going to see that impact now in the high schools and also post-secondary education. At the individual high school level, about 12 of the 112 school districts locally, that's about 11%, are forecast to experience declines with school-age children between now and 2025. And by 2026, the senior population will outnumber children here in Southeast Michigan. Next slide here is just meant to represent our process here visually, so you can understand how we go about conducting our study. We gather data and essentially follow the process you see outlined here to generate the results that we're here presenting to you tonight. The slide you see before you now, this is the blue shaded area with the red outline, that polygon. That's meant to represent the area in which the data was collected. That's the outline of the school district here in Utica. And we utilize a GIS system as well as U.S. Census Bureau data to gather that information and summarize it for you here in this report. So as we get into some of the more finer detail here, this slide is meant to represent the population and how it has either increased or decreased. And as you can see, from 2010 to 2019, in your capture area for Utica schools, the population has increased from 184 to 192,000, and it's projected to increase to 196,000 by the year 2024. If you look down, you'll see that the different age categories kind of paint a different picture, that even with the increase in population we've seen from 2010 to 2019, that all age groups have experienced some level of decline, and that unfortunately is also projected into the future, into 2024. And you can see over in the far right column that's highlighted for you those corresponding percentages from the 19 data to 24. So one might ask, if the population's increasing, but the school age cohorts or age groups are declining, what's driving that population increase? As you can see on this slide here, in 2010, the median family age was 51. That number has increased to 52.4 and is projected to increase to 53. So when we talk about population increase, the driver in that is the older age demographic that's pushing that the population up for your area. The next slide here is meant to represent of the students that are eligible for PK through 12 enrollment. The box that's highlighted, you'll see, shows that you're currently capturing 89% of those eligible K-12 students. Approximately 10% is choosing private school. And if you look, over to the far right, there's two columns there. One, will benchmark you against the rest of Macomb County, and then also the state. I'd just like to point out that you're pretty much on par with the rest of the state of Michigan at 89 and 10% respectively. So some of the findings here. This is just another graph here that will show you the different age groups represented visually. You can see that the age group 12 to 17 is up around that 15,000. It's declined down to that 15.3. Your school age from 0 to 5 is also declining. The two middle have kind of leveled off, but all in all, we're seeing an overall trend of decline when it comes to your projection into 2024 with student enrollment. This next slide here is just meant to represent your live births here in Macomb County. As you can see, your current cohort that's highlighted, I guess to the left of the red box there, or the left red box. So that represents your current student population. Going back to 2000 was kind of like the height of enrollment over the last 20 years, and as we move to the right there, you can see that it's been a sort of a steep decline as we went through the recession period. Came back up a little bit, but we're still seeing an overall trend of decline. And that the far right area is ages 0 to 5, which would be your up and coming cohort into the district. Again, this is another slide just to represent sort of benchmarking where you are today to where you were in the past. So if you look at the box that's highlighted on the upper left, you'll see that your enrollment in 2024 with total enrollment was at 28,000 651. Today, that number is at 26,422, so approximately 2,000 student decline over a 8-year period. Okay, so this slide is where we kind of get into explaining both your historical and then your projected enrollment for the district. We'll start up in the upper left-hand corner. In 2008, the live births in Macomb County were 9,706, and Utica Community Schools' capture rate at that time was 19.04%. And that corresponds down to, if you look at the 2013, 2014, just below there, we're at the K level of 1,848 students. That represents that number. So as you kind of work your way across that top column next to the box, you're going to notice that the live births have decreased and then increased, corresponding to the data shown. And then moving forward, that number continues to decline. It's also important to notice that your capture rate has increased. So as your capture rate has increased, which is a great thing, which means you're providing great services and great educational opportunities to your students, unfortunately, you can't control what that live birth rate looks like. And as you move across to the right, you're going to see, moving into the future here, that the projection for enrollment in 2024-25 brings you to 1,930 students. So as you work across and down to the bottom, you're going to notice that let me see here. So the area shaded to the blue next to the box there indicates that as a net gain or add, you're going to lose 203 students in the next school year. And as you work across there, that number is indicated. And it's also important to note that that number is compounding in nature. So it's 203 students for next year, and then another 200 the next year, and so on and so forth. I also wanted to point out that at the K-12 level, in the year 2022-23, that'll be the first year in the projection that shows that the enrollment, K-12 enrollment will be below 25,000 students. So just something to keep in mind as you move into the future. This next slide here is meant to represent the different stackings, if you will, of grade levels. The highlighted rows indicate the current configuration of your district. So right now you're at for K through 6, you're at 13,028 students. 7 through 9, you're at 6,062 students, and then for 10 through 12, you're at 6,290. Each of those have corresponding values that, when compared to the past, in the K through 6 level, it represents about 1,000 kids that you've lost since 2014. At the 7 through 9, you've lost about 600. And then for the 10 to 12, it's about 346, 350, give or take. This next slide here is just the repeat of the same information you saw on the previous slide, just represented graphically. So kind of getting into some of the summaries of the findings that we had here in the report. As we indicated, the population in your area is growing. Total households, same is growing. Median household age is increasing, and your capture rate is increasing, which are which is a great thing. It's projected that you'll approximately attract 19.7% of eligible K-level students in the future. In our research and in some of the slides you saw, that the K-level will eventually level off over the next 5 years at around 1,800 students. Your grade level 12 is projected to dip and be below 2,000 students by the year 2022. And as I mentioned, you'll be under the 25,000 FTE students by 2022. So what does this all mean, and how do we use this information? So as I previously stated, between the 2014 and 2020 school year, the decrease that you've experienced represents about 1,900 students. And then also moving into the future from today through 2025, you have another 950 student decrease. So when you start to talk about what does that necessarily mean from like a financial aspect, you know, when you take those numbers over the last 7 years and multiply it by your current foundation allowance of $8,200, that represents about a $15.6 million decrease over the last 7 years in funding coming into the district, or revenue into the district, if you will. It's important to note, though, that even with this decrease, through the leadership of the district, you've been able to maintain a fund equity balance, and that only comes from strong leadership, strong fiscal management of your budget. You know, speaking in terms of just financial, when enrollments are declining, it has impacts financially. It also has impacts on things like your credit rating. So, for example, we know that recently Standards & Poor's came through and provided you an update on your current rating. They noted that the rating was derived from things like good general fund revenues and low overall net debt. So as you move forward in the future and you experience further student decrease, which ultimately leads to less revenue coming to the district, it's going to make that task of maintaining that fund equity even more difficult. Some other impacts or other items that you can consider as part of this study shows that there may be an opportunity to look and perhaps reevaluate some of the programming or realigning your programming based on the decrease in students. Also taking a look at perhaps your square footage footprint. I know that approximately 10 years ago, we worked with you on a similar assignment to kind of take a look at square footage corresponding to your student population. Last item I'd like to point out was that the projection that we had provided to you for the 2019-20 school year was 25,653 students. That's when you compare that to the fall count, we were off by approximately 69 students, so that's about a 99.7 accuracy from projection to actual according to your fall count. That brings me to the end of the presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Could you go back to slide number, it's labeled 13 on here, it's the graph of live births?
Yes.
By county. You present a lot of data, and this is very important information for the board to use, because we do have to look at our footprint that we have, and by presenting this data in terms of different age cohorts, we can see where the students are in different grades and how they're moving through there. But this chart really gives the information that's really crucial. If you look at there's that red line there, age 0 to 5 cohort, and those kids that are born in 2014, those are our current kindergartners.
Correct.
And then as you move left along that graph, we got first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade. And you can see that big drop. And while these are the live births, we know that we capture 20% of those
Yep.
of those kids, and that's been consistent for a long time.
Correct.
So this dip is going to propagate through the whole district over
Correct.
the next several years. And if we lose 200 kids, that's about $1.6 million per year in reduced revenue. Then the next year, if we lose 200 kids, that's another $1.6 million in reduced revenue on top of the 1.6 before, so it's 3.2 million.
Correct.
So this compounds. This is that's what we've got to make sure that we're aware of, is that as this smaller cohort moves throughout the district, we get less money, and that money, that reduced revenue happens every single year. And we don't get, by losing a student, that doesn't mean that our cost goes down. The way that when we have this funding on a per pupil basis, if we get one student, we get that foundation allowance, and our costs don't really go up because we don't need another teacher. We don't need to increase classrooms. But on the other hand, if we lose one student, our costs stay the same and we lose revenue. So this whole mechanism of funding makes it very difficult for districts that have declining enrollment. When I got on the board, we were adding 700 kids a year, and that was building schools thinking of different problems that we had. But now
Different and better times.
this is a very serious problem that the board needs to consider. Not only the footprint, but the fact that the revenue that's going to come in every year is going to be down at least 1 point. And as the foundation goes up, foundation allowance would go up, that number would become even larger, and that's compounded every single year. And so we need to keep that in mind as we develop our budget, and also keep in mind that the two numbers that we use, the projected, the enrollment and the foundation allowance, are two numbers that we don't know when we adopt the budget, right? So we're required by law to adopt the budget by July 1st, and we don't know those two numbers at that time. We use your enrollment projections to make the best estimate that we can, and thankfully you're right on for the most part, and we've been able to be accurate in our projections, but we need to use this information thoughtfully as we make decisions going forward, because we have to make sure that we are the fiduciaries of this district, and the seven of us are responsible for what goes for the money that we have, and we got to make sure that when these kids who are in kindergarten now, that's the class of 2032, that they've got the same opportunities that the class of 2020 has.
Dr. Ross, if I may add, sitting, I guess, not in this chair a little over a year ago, I've gotten a little bit smarter sitting on the Board of Education. And one of the things is, your number of pupils or students times this allowance is basically the money that we have, plus or minus some factors. And I think one of the things that's eye-opening when you go to slide number 19, you've summarized it well in terms of we've lost over 12 years, $22 million, or when you go over from 2013 to the projected of 2025. And so, just Dr. Ross tying some of your comments together, we are definitely seeing a change in the district, and it's a change, though, across the state of Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. Yep.
You're not unique.
We're not unique, but it's something that people are having less kids, or people are not having kids at all. And that changes what the future outlook looks like for our district, Macomb County, the state of Michigan. So, just my summary here would be these facts are extremely important. They're putting ourselves into a place of how do we plan for the future of Utica Community Schools. And, I look at your third major bullet of impact to facility footprint considerations. These are some of the tough things that we're going to have to do to right size the district, whether that be in terms of the footprint, as you noted, or other types of things that come along with it. So I certainly appreciate the summary tonight, but it's kind of weighing with heavy heart to me.
Of course, of course.
Are there any other comments or questions? Well, thank you very much for your presentation. We really appreciate it. This is extraordinarily valuable data that the board will use in making decisions going forward.
So Dr. Ross, as we move forward, and we will come back at a future board meeting, and we will incorporate this into the budget process as we move forward. We all know that the governor recently released her budget, and there are several steps to go through before we have potentially a foundation amount as we build our assumptions. So again, we'll remain confident that we will get additional dollars from the state, but we also have to manage this declining enrollment component along with a myriad of other factors to make sure that we continue to keep the structural deficit closed, and that we're able to manage into the future and continue to be fiscally responsible.